Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for the Anti-Communista channel. The equal and opposite force to anti-fascist, Antifa, and Black Lives Matter. What I want to talk about today is one of the problems that we're having in the world with the leftists supposedly fighting for, the rights of, minorities and things like that, which I talked about in the previous video, and, fighting for historical injustices, which is a complete lie. You have to understand, and it's difficult to get people to understand that people are not for social justice. If you're truly for social justice, you should never resort to violence, because that's not how you achieve social justice, is through violence. That is the revolutionary Marxist tactic, as talked about by Karl Marx, that you use violence to get your way and to overthrow governments. This is state subversion. This is how they overthrow legitimate civil societies to bring in the Marxist system. You have to understand that all these people are just being used. This is the Bolshevik technique, and it's also the technique put forth by Antonio Gramsci, which his picture is on the on this channel, which everyone should read. And you have to understand that these people are they're not anything like what they appear to be. They pretend, and it really is pretending, that is not an exaggeration, to be fighting for the rights of all these oppressed groups. In reality, those groups are just being used. Those groups are going to be, if you look at, the Soviet Union, for example, or what was the Bolshevik Revolution and later became the Soviet Union, all of the groups that were put together. It's a way of bringing together all of these, marginalized groups under one umbrella for political reasons, for power. And then once they gain power, once the Marxists or Marxist-Leninists gain power, then they basically get rid of all those people, because you won't be speaking up under a Marxist-Leninist system. It's just as simple as that. It seems like, and these people, they really don't care. You're never going to fight these people with logic. You have to understand that, because they don't care. You could tell them that, that every society in history has had slavery, and that it wasn't just Britain or the U.S. or European countries. Every society that has ever existed has had slavery, and a lot of societies still have slavery today, and no one is complaining about those societies, which should clue you in that these people really don't care about that. That this is not about logic. This is not a war of logic, because in reality, leftists or Marxists, Marxist-Leninists, whatever you want to call them, progressives, liberal progressives, you're never gonna beat these people with logic. They do not care. All they care about is power. They're using all these groups like different minorities, different oppressed minorities, or what have you, marginalized groups, homosexuals, whatever group they can use, whether it's trans people or just to bring them under one umbrella for power. That's what it's all about. That's the Bolshevik technique. You grab every single marginalized group in a society, you bring them together under one umbrella strictly for power. Once they actually gain power and they become the de facto force in your the de facto government in your society, then all those groups disappear, because you won't be speaking up in a Marxist-Leninist society. You will not be standing up for your rights in a Marxist-Leninist system. You will, if you stand up for your rights, you will be sent away and you will disappear. It's really as simple as that. So people need to understand how Marxist-Leninism really works. And China is the same way. China is exactly the same way. It started out, it's the workers. We care about the workers and the bottom of society. We're all about the farmers and the peasants and the workers and all that stuff. I mean, look at them today. They have no rights. They have no rights to speak up. Just like the Soviet Union, they're basically nothing. And you have to understand that in a Marxist-Leninist system, it is not a system without rich people. You're talking about a system where that people think that socialism or communism or whatever, Marxist-Leninism is going to get rid of the rich. That you're going to somehow get rid of the rich, and that the poor are going to dominate society or whatever, and that there won't be any rich people left. That is absolutely not true. I mean, look at the billionaires in China today. And you have to be a member of the Communist Party, like Jack Ma, for example, who owns Alibaba. He's a member of the Communist Party. You have to be a member of the Communist Party. So, communists, Marxist-Leninists, they absolutely accept an upper class, and even in the Communist Manifesto, you have to remember, people. You have to wake up to this fact. You have to realize that this is not what it appears to be. That Marxist-Leninists, communists, leftists are not what they appear to be. You will still have a class system. It'll just be a communist Marxist-Leninist class system, where you'll have your people at the bottom, basically your proletariat, and then you'll have your technocratic class. You'll have your managers, your people who will manage the society for you, which you usually have no experience in these areas. They're just power hungry, power mad people. And then you'll have your Politburo. You'll have your upper echelon of society, which are basically the untouchables. These people are just can't be questioned. They live in an entirely different world, and they do whatever they want. Which is they have freedom. The people that are in the Politburo, like in the Soviet Union or in China today, the billionaires, they just do whatever they want. They're the only people with freedom. They're not the ones that are being sent off to the labor camps, or they're not the ones being sent off to if they speak out against the society and just disappear. So those people have society. You're still going to have your three levels. At least three levels in society. You're going to have your people at the bottom, your proletariat, who will not have any say. You'll just basically order around and do what you want. You'll be managed. You'll be scientifically managed by the managerial class. The technocratic managerial class will manage you and tell you what to do and tell you where to go and tell you where to live and tell you what you can do. And that is the Marxist-Leninist stratification, social stratification. That's how you will live under that system. And all these people that are fighting for this type of society today, that think they're going to be at the top, or think they're going to be in some sort of higher position or something like that, or think that it's going to be some glorious society of equality and unity, or where everyone's equal. It's not going to be equal. I mean, you obviously haven't read. I mean, if you think that a Marxist-Leninist society is going to be equal, and everyone's going to be the same, or everyone's going to have the same income or social status or something like that, you obviously have not read the Communist Manifesto, because if you actually read it, there's still a social stratification. There still is a class system. It's just a different class system. Okay. And people need to wake up to this and just really, really wake up, And the other thing I wanted to bring up, other than the fact that, that people, there's so many misconceptions out there about what a Marxist-Leninist or communist society is, especially with young people, it seems, people that are just being used, in these groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa, that have these, these romantic ideas of what a Marxist-Leninist or communist system is. They're just useful idiots. They have some sort of watered down, almost cartoonish idea of what a Marxist-Leninist system is. It's nothing like what they imagine, and they obviously have not read the writings of Marx, they sort of just take this sort of watered down, handed down version of it, because if you actually read it, it really is not. It's not a system of equality, and it does make even in North Korea. I mean, you have hereditary power structures, which are passed down between basically one family, which supposedly a Marxist or a communist society was supposed to be against, right? You don't have monarchies, you don't have royalties and monarchies in a Marxist system, Marxist-Leninist system. And, China is basically the same way. You have the same families, ruling this system. And the Soviet Union was more or less the same way. The same families, it's basically, it's a monarchy. It's a system of nepotism, just under the banner of Marxist-Leninism. It's a joke, really. These people are deluded. If you think that somehow, this great, glorious thing, socialism, Marxist-Leninism, communism is going to, solve society's problems or something, and it's going to be this great society of equality where everyone shares everything. And I mean, these people are just deluded. I mean, you really need to wake up. It not only is that not true not only is that not true in theory. I mean, it's not even true in the writings of Karl Marx or of anyone that came after him. There's going to be this perfect society of equality and fairness. This is not what it's about. This is, wake up. Really, really wake up. And also the fact that I wanted to bring up is, I wanted to sort of tie this in with the coronavirus, and the fact that the coronavirus is, obviously came from China, from communist China. And it came from China at a time, and all the evidence, all the news points to the fact that it came from the Wuhan lab, certainly with some globalist involvement, some globalist leaders' involvement, like Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates, certainly in there somewhere, as he funds the WHO and making excuses for China. And also, I believe he also funded the lab at Wuhan. He has some ties to that and funded, directly or indirectly. So you have to look at the fact. You have to look at this in the light of revolutionary Marxist theory. Revolutionary Marxist theory is violent overthrow. It's violent overthrow. It's global domination of all countries on Earth through violence. And that would certainly fall right in line with the coronavirus. This is at a time when, you have to remember, this is at a time when, since all evidence points to the Wuhan lab and the people that were funding it, the shady characters, certainly the globalist figures that were funding it, this falls right in line with revolutionary Marxist theory that global dominance through violent overthrow. And this was at a time, you have to remember that when the coronavirus came out, and it's pretty obvious that China hid the initial impact of the virus in China itself, that this is a time when China's economy was really down. China was getting a lot of pressure from tariffs and whatnot on the Chinese economy, and the Chinese economy was tanking. And also, the United States was trying to decouple from China economically, or is in the process of doing that, trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So China was getting hit on pretty much all sides. So, anytime communists or Marxist-Leninists are threatened, they're violent anyway. I mean, the whole theory of communism is violent overthrow, world domination through violent overthrow. The world communist conspiracy, the sort of 80s, Reaganite term, which is actually much older than that, but is absolutely true. It's absolutely true that, it seeks to take over the world, to take over every country in the world. So it does look like this virus was either, accidentally or deliberately released by China at a time when, obviously China was getting pretty well beat up by the United States on many fronts, economically, maybe perhaps even militarily, because and the Chinese reaction. There's no proof that they did it deliberately, but it certainly would fall in line with Marxist revolutionary theory to do something like that to counteract the damage that had been done to the Chinese economy, and also the fact that several of the doctors there that sort of disappeared, the researchers there that have disappeared, were working on coronaviruses that could penetrate, that could use the proteins on the outer surfaces of the viruses to penetrate human cells. They were, obviously engineered. It was not a natural virus, and there's at least 2 or 3 Chinese researchers that say that this was an engineered virus, and a Taiwanese researcher as well that says it's an engineered virus with a modified protein, a mutated protein on the outside of the surface of the protein of the virus, a protein on the surface of the virus to penetrate human cells and cause infections and diseases. So and the fact that the virus was most evidence points to the fact that the virus was engineered, and that China was either extremely negligent or deliberately let this virus out into the world, and then they're out patrolling the Asian seas, showing their dominance, and then flying jets over Taiwan, military jets over Taiwan a few days ago. It all points to the fact that this was a plan. I would have to say it's certainly very coincidental, in a time when the Chinese economy was certainly in the dumps. So it certainly points to the fact that China in cahoots and in coordination with some of the globalists, like Bill Gates and others, working together to sort of bring this virus out to the world, and sort of this would hopefully shift the balance of power in favor of China, which it has done in some sense. And we certainly have seen the weaknesses of the United States in terms of manufacturing, its own items and whatnot as a result of it. So in conclusion, I would just have to say that it seems to point to the fact that the virus was probably released deliberately. Or possibly released deliberately. So, and it would certainly, and you stack that with the fact that Marxist revolutionary theory, violent overthrow, world domination through violent overthrow. It certainly would fall in line with Marxist-Leninist theory, and China is certainly a Marxist-Lenin, very committed to Marxist-Leninism, and Xi Jinping has certainly come out and said that on more than one occasion. Anyway, so these are my thoughts on the current situation, and also the fact of these poor people. I feel sorry for them. The ones that, all the oppressed groups out there and marginalized groups in society that are just being used by the Marxist-Leninist, leftist progressives. These people don't care at all about you. They really don't. They're just using you to gain power. They're using the young people, just like communists always do, just like Marxists. They always use the young. They had the Red Brigades in China, during Mao's regime. They had certainly the youth brigades in the USSR that turn in your parents and whatnot, and they always use the young. They always use the young because you're naive and you have romantic and you believe anything, and you're fearless in many ways. So you're being used, and it's just common to use the youth, and it's really sad. But anyway, those are my thoughts, and thank you very much for joining me. This is the Anti-Communista channel where we deconstruct, like the leftist Marxist-Leninists always like to deconstruct others. So let's deconstruct the deconstructors here. Anyway, so thank you Thank you for joining me at the Anti-Comunista channel, the equal and opposite opposing force to for Antifa and BLM. All right, thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourself out there.